Suggested that I have Ben Dembski and Will Mueller on the show. Never been on the show, not too familiar with these two guys, so I figured I'd have them on to do a little bit of ORCS results review and some NCT preview. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing good. I just got off spring break, and I think I'm ready to unretire from mock trial.
I'm doing well, too. I had a nice, relaxing week. I'm good. I'm doing fine.
So how much did the chatter online about you guys being recurring guests on the show dissuade you from appearing yet again on this program?
I'll be honest, Phil, I made up my mind never to come on this show ever again. I don't like being criticized. But when you held a gun in my head and said that I had to come do elitism with you, I really felt like I couldn't say no. So here I am.
Okay. Moving on to Will. Will, how do you feel about the chatter online?
I love it. I think it's funny. If anything, it makes me want to come on the show more. So I welcome it.
How do your teammates feel about your newfound celebrity?
You know, they definitely tease me a little bit, but it's all in good fun. So it's fine.
Your sister is a competitor at UArgon. How does she feel that her younger brother is such a quick to happen star in the AMTA community?
I think she's had her fair share of fame over the years too. So I think it's good.
She's happy to hand over the reins to you in the Mueller household. So I want to talk with you guys about the ORCS results, and I want to start off by talking about your results. Let's start with Tufts. Bennett, your Tufts program had another good run at ORCS, 2 bids to nationals. How's the program feeling about those results?
I think they're feeling really happy. I don't want to speak for anyone because they're student run and I am very lightly involved. I went to New Rochelle. I got to watch the B team. I got to offer a little advice, and I'm really proud of them. But I think everyone's really happy. It is really hard to get 2 teams to nationals. It is really hard to do it 2 years in a row. It is really hard to do it when you are not an aggressively coached program. And I'm so proud of those guys. I'm really glad for them. They all get to go to Memphis. What
was your involvement with the Tufts teams leading up to ORCS, and what will your involvement be with them for NCT?
So I would say I did basically nothing until like 3 weeks ago. I just a scrimmage here and there. So the B team did not make it out of regionals, and the C team and D team did. So there was a restacking that used some people from B, C, and D, and I sort of hopped on board with someone who just graduated my year, Jess Perillo, who goes to BC Law now, and we sort of helped him out a little. We went to like 3-4 practices before ORCS, and we went and watched him. So I would say pretty lightly involved, but a little bit. And going forward, I think for nationals, I'll help with the A team a bit, just because I'm just competing with those guys.
Does that mean you'll be sort of there, day in and day out leading up to nationals, traveling with the team, or sort of a consultant on an as-needed basis?
So I'm definitely going to go. Like I want to watch for sure. But yeah, I'll do what they need. Whatever Margaret tells me to do, she's in charge. So I am happy to do whatever she needs and to help write anything if anyone wants, or give advice or give feedback. I'm at their disposal.
So I think there's sort of a line between like full-fledged coach and like consultant is sort of like, are you in the shower thinking about, is that a good theme? Like, should we change that theme? Like, that's the sort of the dividing line. It sounds like you don't know which of those kinds of coaches you're going to be for this team.
I very much have not been that person. Like, I expect I probably will be thinking about the case pretty deeply when I read it. I'm going to care and I'm going to want to help, but so far I haven't gotten to that stage yet.
Will, I want to talk about Americans results. I think most of the people who were predicting what was going to happen in DC were sort of just kind of taking for granted that America was going to get out, given how good of a season the team had. And you guys were the last team, the team with the best record to not make it out of the DC York. How tough was that?
I mean, obviously it's really tough. Like, I think all year long, I felt like we were going to go. I felt like we were nationals level team. I thought we played nationals level teams pretty evenly. So it's tough. but yeah, we had like some unlucky results. We went 4-2-2, 2 ties, but I mean, what can you do? It happens, and we'll be back next year.
How tough was the DC Orc?
I thought it was really tough. I mean, it's a lot of good teams. Like if you look at the teams that qualified, we had a really close round against Virginia, round 3. That was one of the ones we tied. But yeah, I mean, DC Orcs is always tough.
You got to see Ethan Marks, who's a former Gladiator winner, and you guys are sort of in the Gladiator brotherhood together. You being the runner-up the year after him. What was that like competing against him?
It was cool. It was a little surreal because I'd only like ever seen him online, and I talked with him after the round. Apparently, at some point, I like crossed him for some Gladiator competition, which I didn't remember, but it was cool.
You're just that big of a celebrity now that you don't even remember cross-examining Ethan Marks.
No, it was a long time ago.
So I want to talk about sort of the Orcs results generally. Let's start with the most surprising team to not get a bid to Orcs. What would you say is the most surprising no bid result?
So I'm obviously biased because it's my sister's team, but I think it's surprising that Oregon didn't make it out of Santa Monica. I know from personal, knowledge that they're really good. I think they had some close rounds. I think they played USC maybe in the last round, but yeah, I think that was pretty surprising. They're really good.
Yeah, that Santa Monica Orc, I don't know if you two would agree, but I think is probably the toughest Orc. I mean, it's just a total bloodbath. I mean, there's so many good teams. It feels like everyone in California is good. And that would be my guess for that was sort of certainly the deepest Orc, I would say, without a doubt. But I would say probably just the toughest overall. That's tough. And USC, the team that you mentioned, was the number 1 team out of that Orc. So the best record in the Orc that weekend. So tough draw for them. Bennett, what would you say is the most surprising result of the weekend of the 2 weekends?
I will pass on the easy answer and I will stay in Santa Monica and I'll say Berkeley A. I think that they won GCF. They're always spectacular, so good. To see them not get out is tough because they would have been a real force at Nats. And then my kind of secondary answer is not surprising, but I really feel for I think the 3 teams that ended up with 6 wins and didn't get out. That's always surprising to see 6-win teams not make it out. I know it's more likely than it used to be now with the new pairing system, but it's 6 wins is you've done your job, you should get to go, and it's not always true.
And for those who aren't nerds like us scouring the tab summaries, who are those 6-win teams?
I think it's Vandy, Illinois for the 2nd year in a row, which is really hard, and Princeton at New Rochelle.
I'll say the most surprising no bid is Furman's no bid, which we don't have the tab summary yet because we're recording this a few hours after the conclusion of the last Orc. And Furman ended today. The Greenville Orc ended today. Competing in Greenville, which is obviously in their hometown. Murray Edwards is fantastic. 3rd at combat last year. She's really, really good. It's a strong program and a program with a lot of historical success. So I was pretty surprised and bummed out for them, especially for Murray, who's a senior. But the good news is she'll be hopefully competing at Trial by Combat in June, and she'll get one more shot at this. Let's turn to most impressive result in the country. Will, what would you say is the most impressive result for any program that competed at Orcs?
I'm going to go with Wisconsin. So it's my understanding that their A team didn't make it out of regionals and that the team at Orcs was mostly their B team. So, if that's true, even if it's not, but if that's true, to get 7.5 ballots and win, I think is really impressive. And from what I've heard, they're absolutely amazing.
Bennett?
I am going to say Fordham Rose Hill in New Rochelle. I've never competed against Fordham Rose Hill, but I competed in the Northeast for 4 years and did not really hear too much about Fordham Rose Hill. I think, and I might be wrong, I think if you go back pretty far, on older tab summaries at nationals, you see Fordham Rose Hill. But at least for the last 5-6 years, they have not been a threat at Orcs, and they were dominant in New Rochelle. They beat MIT. They beat Wesleyan A. They split a really, really underrated Wellesley team. And just to see them go 7-1 like that at what I think is one of the toughest dorks in the country is really impressive. They'll be one to watch at Nats, and they'll be one to watch down the line.
Yeah, so just a couple of other impressive results that I'll point out. The two bid schools, Tufts, Florida, Chicago, Patrick Henry, UCLA, no surprises there. And then Hillsdale, two bids out of the Illinois org were really surprising and really impressive. I'll just highlight two other results that I think are impressive. Number one, Michigan finishing number one in the Illinois org. Friends of the program, Lucy Brock, Rob Williams are excellent competitors. Was not super surprised to see that, but it's a very impressive result nonetheless. And then Cincinnati, which just came out in the Cincinnati org about an hour or two before this recording. Really impressive. That's a super, super tough org with Patrick Henry and Yale right at the top. One of their competitors, Jessica Lorenzo, I've seen her compete on video, never in person, but on video. She competed for Florida's team last year, that was really, really good. She was an all-regional attorney. And I think that team is a very underrated team that could do some damage at nationals. Now that we are a couple of hours post the last ORC result, that means that the nationals case has been released. Ben, I know you've had a chance to leaf through it, given that you may or may not be coaching two of the teams competing in Memphis in a few weeks. What is your knee-jerk reaction to the case?
I haven't looked through it. I literally opened it. I saw it was legal malpractice, and I have not looked at it. I came on this call instead, and I ate my dinner, and then I came on this. You
have looked at some of it,
like the title page. I think it's going to be really interesting. I saw
have a take.
I flipped through it. There are a lot of depositions. I haven't read it yet. It's going to be interesting. Experts making legal opinions. I think I saw. I really I cannot offer any sort of educated take on it because I truly just scrolled down and scrolled back up. But I think it's going to be interesting. It was a Justin Bernstein UCLA law trial team special. So the case is going to be really, really, really well put together.
All I heard is that there's too many depositions, and that's your take at the beginning. You did say there's quote a lot of depositions. So I'll pass that criticism along to Justin.
Not criticism.
I want to talk about NCT and predictions. Obviously, Bennett will keep your tough squad out of it because I think you'll be crossing your fingers and toes that this is the year that Tufts breaks out of second place into the final round. But setting Tufts aside, what are your guys' thoughts on predictions for the final round? And the rules on this show. You must pick two schools. You can't pick the same two schools as your counterpart here. Who do you think is going to be in the final round?
Benny, you can go first on this one.
I'm thinking. Okay. I'm just trying to decide. All right. I'll pick two schools. I think Harvard will be there again. I know it was their B team that earned the bid, but I would have to imagine that Travis and Jessica and Audrey and Braden and those guys will be there on that team. And, they won. They're the only school that's going to be at the tournament that knows what it's like to win. And I think that is going to serve them really well in Memphis. So they're my first pick. And I don't know. I just got a hunch about this one. I'll say they're playing UCLA B in the final. UCLA B had a higher record than UCLA A. UCLA B was in the 2011 final round. They won. It's possible. I have seen a couple of the competitors on UCLA B over the course of the year. I think in the fall season I judged them, and they're really good. I think they're one of those teams that always has a B team that is genuinely good enough to try for the national title. And I wanted to make a pick that was interesting and not someone that was right at the top of the TPR list. And that's going to be my prediction.
Wow. Maybe the hottest take in WatchMock history. He thinks the B team of one of the team that's at NCT is going to be in the finals.
It's happened before. Yale B in 2018, UCLA B in 2011. You can never count out a team as strong.
Except nobody predicted that those years.
That's my hot take. Okay. And never count out Rhodes on home turf. They know those judges. They're familiar with that style. Never count Rhodes out.
We're going to edit that out because that was a violation of the rules to only pick two schools. So we'll edit that Rhodes part out.
Sorry.
Will?
All right. So my first team is Patrick Henry. I feel like I kind of have to pick one of my teams I've actually seen. And I think they're probably the best team that we saw this season. And then my other team has got to be Yale. I just think, they make the final round almost every year. You can never count them out. So that's my pick.
Will going out on a limb and picking Patrick Henry and Yale.
I feel like that's a hotter
Man.
pick than Bennett's UCLA B pick, right?
Much hotter take. Scorcher.
Yeah.
So truthfully, the team I feel most confident in is Patrick Henry. I just think that they've been so good for so many straight years. 2 bids again. Whatever they're doing is working, and I think this is the year they break through. But if I've got to pick 2 teams different than the ones that you guys picked, I'm going to go with Chicago. Obviously the national champion last year, but returning some of their talent, and I think they should be in a good position to return to the final round. So I'll go with Chicago and UVA. I think on the short prep with a new case, it is conducive to the style of UVA's preparation, and I just like the way that they do mock trial. That's my kind of team. So I will go with Chicago and UVA. The last thing I want to ask you guys in terms of predictions is about trial by combat. That's coming up in just a few months. And I want to ask you guys to make a prediction on who the winner of Trial by Combat 2023 is going to be in Philadelphia in a couple of weeks. I'll start with you, Bennett. You can't pick someone from Tufts.
I'm not going to pick someone from Tufts. Listen, I've been on this show so many times that last time I was on, you asked me who I thought would win Trial by Combat 2023. And I feel like I'm going to say, I feel like I get some grace to keep my boring pick because I picked UCLA beat to be in the final round. I said it was going to be Murray Edwards. I still, maybe I didn't say it or I thought it. I remember I think I was going to win. Yeah. Murray's going to win. Furman not being at nationals, I really feel bad. She's going to come back with a vengeance. She's going to win Trial by Combat. That's my guess.
Will.
I'm going to keep things controversial and go Travis Harper here.
Whoa. Travis Harper, you picked that name out of a hat. Man, both of you just really just going out on a limb. Travis Harper, Murray Edwards.
I'd already picked Murray. It was my honest opinion. I couldn't change it just to sound more interesting.
Well, there you have it. Now I want to, before I leave you guys, Bennett to maybe or maybe not get on with coaching and Will to get on with the summer. I want to talk to you guys about what's next. Will, what are you planning on doing for the next couple months until the AMP season picks up again?
Well, it's crazy. First of all, it's like the first, I don't think I've gone more than a month without doing mock trial for the last 3 years. So it'll be interesting, but I think I'm going to try and help out with Gladiator over the summer. Maybe come watch Trial by Combat. I think that'll be fun, but mostly just looking forward to the season starting in October.
You think you'll do Rookie Rumble?
If they do it, yeah, for sure.
Do you have any idea who you team up with? Someone from Americans? Someone else?
I don't think so, not yet, but I'll think about it.
I'm gonna be the first to put out there that I think you and Connor Wright should team up for Rookie Rumble, and that'd be a really cool story to see you guys. Maybe. And Jack, how old is Jackson? Is Jackson a sophomore?
He's a sophomore.
I think he's sophomore.
So maybe the 3 of you.
Yeah, we'll get a Gladiator reunion. I like that.
Bennett, what's after NCT is over? What are you planning on doing?
I go back to my job. I don't know. Nothing too interesting. I'm just working in Boston. I'm living life. I'll apply to law school probably this fall. We got some really good stuff. Rhea and I run Mock On, and we got some really good stuff coming. We got a high school tournament in May, our Tournament of Champions, and then we have another high school tournament, our first one, coming up in October. So that's going to be really, really exciting. We just released a case and we're working on another one now. So we're super excited about that. But yeah, hopefully I'll get to be at TBC either as a coach or as a judge, and I'll stay connected to the mock world there.
Well, we would love to have both of you in any capacity at Trial by Combat in a few months. Hoping to see you guys in Philly. And given that you're my 2 best friends, it would be kind of not cool for you guys to not come. So
can we get some cheesesteaks?
Whatever you guys want.
Anything.
joined today by the first 3 competitors selected for Trial by Combat 2023. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves in case the viewers at home don't already know you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Charlie Stock. I'm a competitor for the University of Notre Dame.
Hi everyone, I'm Travis. I'm a senior at Harvard.
Hi, everyone. My name is Murray, and I'm the president of Furman Mock Trial.
You guys excited to come to Philly in a few months?
Very
Have you been to Philly?
I was there like for a night after nationals, like just for the night, just to have dinner, and it was really nice. So I'm excited to like see it in the daytime.
When you mean when nationals were in Philly a couple years ago?
No, it was in Lancaster last year, and
Right.
like flew out of Philly. So we were there for the night, but I've like never gotten a chance to like explore the city, so I'm excited.
Charlie, Travis, have you guys been?
Actually, funny story. The last time I was in Philly was for a work retreat that I had to leave early to go back to New York for Trial by Combat that same weekend. So I actually took a train from Philly back to New York that weekend. It was virtual back then, so I was just doing it from my apartment. But that was the last time I was in Philly, actually. And it was really, really lovely. So I'm excited to go back.
Well, we're excited to host you guys. My next question was going to be, have you been to the Kline Institute of Trial Advocacy where the tournament will be held? But I guess the answer to that is no. And so you guys are in for a treat. Super excited to have you guys in Philly. And hopefully the thing about Philly, now that I've traveled a lot for work and been to a bunch of cities for work and for traveling for tournaments as a coach, is I think it is, and no one yell at me if you disagree, I think it is without a doubt the best food city in the country. It's the restaurants here are significantly better than like the best restaurants I've been to in other cities, and they're good. I just think Philly's on another level. So if there's one thing I would recommend while you're here, it's try a bunch of restaurants. I am happy to make recommendations depending on what you like. I have lots of favorites, but I think you'll eat good for that weekend for sure. But we're excited to host you guys. What do you guys think the best food city is? You guys didn't seem convinced.
I'm a big barbecue and steak guy, so I got to go with my home state. I'll say Dallas.
What's your favorite barbecue? I love barbecue.
I'm a brisket guy, so smoked brisket. That's my favorite.
Do you have a favorite place?
My favorite restaurant of all time is probably Papa Bros Steakhouse in Dallas. So
it's funny you say that. Barbecue is the one hole in Philly's game. There's no good barbecue in Philly. There's like a couple places that are decent, but there's not really a ton of barbecue. I love barbecue. When I went to nationals in law school in 2018, Justin and I camped out outside of Franklin's. Have you been there? So Franklin's is in Austin. It's like the #1 barbecue place if you like look at the list in the country. And you have to like camp out at like 4 a.m. for when it opens at like 9 or 10 to get an order before the food runs out. So we did that, and it lived up to the hype. It was really, really good. So I suggest that too. Who knew I was such a foodie, guys? Murray and Travis, do you guys have a take on best food city?
I don't know if I have like a place that I'm like, this is the best food city. I just don't, Philly just has never come to mind when I thought about like great food. I'm sorry.
Wow.
I don't know. Like
Those are fighting words.
Like you think like New York pizza or something like that. And I've actually never been to New York, so I can't even comment on that. All I know is that Philly, you said that, and it just, I don't know. I'm really gonna have to like test that out when I go.
Well, now I'm sort of like, now I'm gonna make you go to a couple of restaurants that I like in Philly when you're here, because like you're wrong, respectfully.
I mean, no shade
Amazing.
to people from Philly. I don't know. I'll take your list though. We'll
Okay.
see.
All right. And honor code. If it turns out that I'm right, you'll come on the show and admit it.
I will. I'll do that. Yeah.
Maybe we'll do a WatchMock live from my favorite restaurant. Travis, do you have a take?
My only take is that I'm partial to my own hometown of Atlanta, which also has really, 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 really good food. My favorite part of my city too. So
I've never been to Atlanta.
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like there's not much to like visit and see, but like it's great to live there. There's lots of great food, like of all kinds. So
You guys are going to be impressed. And the food bill for Trial by Combat just went up probably like $1,000 just because of the quality of food I'm not going to have to get to convince you guys. Let's talk about Trial by Combat. Murray and Travis, you are returning to the field this year. I had the WatchMock intern do a little research before the show, and he tells me that 42% of the returners over the last 5 years have made the playoffs in their return to Trial by Combat, and you two made the playoffs last year. So given that you're both returning, and Travis, you're returning for a third time, which we'll talk about in a second, do you feel any pressure?
I mean, for me, I feel, I guess, a little bit. I think coming in last year, I had no expectations for myself. I kind of just was like, I don't want to embarrass myself, so like, let's just go put up a good fight. And then I did like way better than I expected, and like going into the season, I just have come in with a lot more confidence. So like, I think there is definitely a little bit of pressure, but I think I'm in a confident spot where I feel like I can still do well and I can like rise to the occasion.
It's funny, like, what a difference a year makes. I remember when I had you on the show last year, I said to you, like, you're kind of the under the radar person. There's not a lot of people talking about you. And now everyone is talking about you heading into this tournament. Like, you've been picked by multiple people to win. Do you feel like a little bit like, yeah, I earned that. Like, I've earned that target on my back.
I don't know. I like maybe a little bit, but I feel like especially with like my team not like getting the bid to nationals this year, I feel like an added like I want to do this for them. Like it feels like bigger than myself. So I mean, like regardless of what happens, I'm excited to go in and like get another chance to compete and like finish my senior year with a bang. So I mean, I'm obviously going to be very, very nervous going into it, but I'm very excited for this year.
Speaking of targets on their back, the 3-time Trial by Combat selection, national champion last year, going for back-to-back national championships at Harvard this year. The other sort of, I'd say, co-favorite of this event going into the in the early polls so far. Travis, do you feel a certain way in terms of there being a target on your back going into this event in a couple months?
I think I don't feel a certain type of way. I feel I think I'm excited to go back because I think that the statistic that you cited makes sense, because I feel like last year I came back and I felt like everything made so much more sense than the first time I did it, and I can only imagine what that will be the third time I do it as well. And so like, if anything, I'm just really excited to like continue to maybe get a handle on what like objectively is like one of the most like hardest tournaments I've ever done. And I think that like last year, like it's also just so like these trials can sometimes be decided on like the flip of the hat, and like it's like a tip of the hat. I don't know whatever the idiom is.
Flip of a coin. Flip of a coin.
Flip of a coin. It's very spontaneous.
We're gonna go tip of a hat.
Yes. And so I'm not going in like expecting to like needing to win, but like I do feel like I am very confident with like my handle and like the competition, and like I'm really excited to continue to like get better at that. But yeah, I'm just excited to be back, and it's such a great space. Like every time I've gone, it's just been such a fun time, even besides like wherever I placed. Like it's always been just an amazing like space and experience. So I'm just excited for
it. And notwithstanding the terrible food, you're gonna get to go to all three formats, Zoom, LA, and now Philly. So you're the only one who can say that.
No, that's so true.
Charlie, you have something on these two. They lost trials last year. You've never lost a trial by combat.
I'm 0 for 0.
Yeah, that's right. What did you do last year when you were out in LA?
I was the alternate for trial by combat. So I got to travel with everyone else, prepare the case just like everyone else would prepare the case. And then had the experience of trying to see if anyone would have to drop out if someone got sick or something like that. No one did. So I got to sit there with my defense and prosecution prepped and get to watch all the trials. And then I got to be a witness in the semifinals, which was very fun. Yeah. But having that experience was very valuable.
Charlie was like going around sneezing on people, trying to get them sick over on the Friday of the prep day. What did you actually do that weekend? Did you actually like prep it for real?
I did. Yeah, no, I prepped it for real. I wanted it, even if I didn't get to compete. I sort of was assuming I wasn't going to once everyone showed up for the tournament, but I still wanted to prep it for practice. Because I knew that the alternate typically does get a recurring invite for the next year. And I wanted to have the experience of prepping it as if I actually was going to compete.
What did you learn?
A lot. It's very, very difficult. It's unlike any other experience I've had prepping a mock trial case. And having gone through that experience, I think I'm just say I'm glad I went through it. It's you have to work so much faster than I anticipated you have to work, and the advice that like I went into it sort of thinking like, oh, I go to get some help from my coach in second chair, but I can mostly do this on my own. No, that the team is so important, and I'm hoping to do more practice runs of the 24-hour prep over the summer before I actually compete, to maybe have a little bit more experience under my belt to compete with these two veterans.
So speaking of these two veterans, Travis, we mentioned a couple of times that this is your third selection. The only other person to be selected 3 times is, anyone know?
If I had to
Yeah.
guess, it would be kids.
Yeah, some people have heard of Sydney. So you're in rare company here. I'm assuming that you probably learned a ton from year 1 to year 2, but what did you learn from year 2 to year 3?
I think one thing I learned from year 2 to year 3 was to be a bit more flexible during the actual competition part. Actually, that sounds a little bit weird, but I think that especially proceeding through like through the semis, and like even in the round that morning, I there were so many things that I'd learned from the day before that I probably should have like integrated like into what I was doing, but for miscellaneous reasons of like wanting to memorize certain things or like wanting to know my content perfectly, like I just did not incorporate it at all, and I was like, there's more important things to do. But I think that it kind of affected me negatively on that last day, and I made choices that probably would have been better if I had like sat down and reflected a little bit more about what I learned from like actually trying the case the day before. But yeah, that's a small thing, and I think that just like what everyone knows, that speed. I ran out of time for the second year in a row. Hopefully the third time I won't. Hopefully the third time I will have enough time to write everything. But I think even then, like I think I have an even better handle on what parts of the trial that I need to spend the most amount of time writing, which the ones that maybe if I don't spend as much time will be fine. And I think I have a really good sense of what that is now, especially after the 2 years. So I think those are the 2 things that I'm bringing back, and just like generally keeping up energy. I think that's a really hard thing during TBC too. It's just you're so tired and you need to bring like the energy and passion in every trial. So and for me, that was through multiple Red Bull, copious amounts of Red Bull. So
Can you guys announce your second chairs and coaches? Can you break news here on the show? I always like, so I watched a lot of these episodes back and prep for this one, and I noticed that every time I asked that question, people's faces were just like, can I? I'm not sure. If you can't, you can't, it's fine. But if you have any of you have a sense of who your coaches and or second chairs are going to be?
My coach is going to be Henry Lehman. He's the coach of Notre Dame mock trial. And then my second chair is going to be Max Thompson, who's the other closer for Notre Dame mock trial.
Nice. Murray and Travis, do you guys know?
So I think I'm gonna bring back the same crew from last year. So Spencer Richardson, who was the president of Furman mock trial when I was a freshman. And then Lily Meyer, she's my co-counsel, and she's the other closer for Furman.
It's not broke, don't fix it.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
Travis?
So actually might have a switch up this year. I think Sarah Simmons will still be my coach, but my second chair is still TBD. And I think hopefully it's probably gonna be someone younger than me. In previous years it was Stella, for context, who was my co-captain. We were both seniors this year, but Stella, for very valid reasons, did not compete this year. And so she probably doesn't want to do a second chair. So I'm still figuring that out. But I think that Sarah will hopefully still be there as my coach.
Will there be some sort of tryout for second chair? Like who can cite your exams faster?
Oh dear God, and no, it's not that deep. No, it's just gonna be honestly seeing who's willing to travel on a weekend, in the middle of their summer to do mock trial. That will be the major criteria.
Murray, last year you predicted the winner correctly. I want to hear your prediction for the winner of Trial by Combat 2022. You may not choose each other. You can choose anyone you want. Murray, you're first.
I'm gonna say Ben Crosby.
Did you just have a sense that it was going to be Ben Crosby?
I mean, I hit him at Orcs, and I remember thinking, like, God, he's really, really good. Like, I hope I don't have to hit him again. And then, yeah. So I think, like, I think I can do it again.
Travis, you predicted Liz Grant, and Charlie, you predicted Ruby Scanlon. Both did very well. Were great at the tournament last year, but there can only be one winner, and that was Ben, chosen by Murray. Do you guys want to take another shot at this? Who's going to win in 2023? And you know the rules. One name, can't pick each other.
This is tough. I'll go with someone who I actually competed with over the summer, not in my program, but he goes to the University of Chicago. We competed on a rookie rumble team together, and he is absolutely incredible. He was Ali Alekri's second chair last year, Sam Farnsworth. I don't know if he applied yet. I don't even know if he's doing it, but if he is, I think he might win.
Sam is great. I first watched Sam compete as a high school competitor at Gladiator in 2019. That was when I first met Travis. And I remember then thinking he was awesome. And I think that's a really good pick. I think he's certainly talented enough. Travis?
Okay. I can't give two names, right?
You know, okay, I will bend the rules just this one time. For any of you watching that are coming on the show next, just this one time. And we'll let you pick two names, provided that they're not anyone on this call.
Okay, yes, they're not. And I'm just not sure who from this program is applying, but I think both people are very talented. So I want to say Cole Reese and Margaret Veglin from Tufts Mock Trial. I said both of them because they're both extremely talented, like actually like scarily talented. Like Tufts is like we're so close with them, and we scrimmage them all the time. So I've seen Cole and Margaret not just like this year, but literally like since they were freshmen, and we're on the 18 from the moment they joined the program. And they've always been excellent. And I know that if one of them applied and like got it, that they would do really, 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 really well. So yeah.
Murray, why don't you just tell us who the winner's going to be?
Oh gosh, Mariah. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. I think Elena Young from UCSB. First of all, she's just like an amazing human being. Every time I talk to her, anything, I'm just instantly happy because she's wonderful. But then she's also like just scary. Like you just don't want to hit her in round. And I think if she applies and makes it, I think that she is going to do very, very well as well.
Really great picks. Lots of former gladiators, which is really, really cool. That's how you know you're getting old. And like I saw some of these competitors for the first time when they were like sophomores in high school, and now they're about to start law school. In the meantime, I'm looking forward to sharing multiple meals with you guys and persuading you that my take is right and you guys are wrong. And maybe the viewers will weigh in the comments. Looking forward to seeing you guys in a couple months. I'm joined today by probably the two most requested guests for this show. Why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Hey, I'm Ben Wallace. I competed at UVA from 2008 to 2012 in AMTA, and then at Yale Law School from 2014 to 2016.
Hey everyone, Rahul Hari. I competed for UC Irvine and AMTA from 2009 to 2013, and then NYU for law school from 2013 to 2016.
So what have you guys been up to for the last 7 years?
Living life, man. Have a wife, have a baby. So I when I graduated from law school, I clerked for 2 years, worked at DOJ for a little bit, clerked again. I was at Kirkland until like 2 weeks ago. and I'm going to be an AUSA back home in Wilmington, Delaware, starting in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I went straight to Big Law, was there for about a year. Then I moved to a boutique, practiced mostly trial work for 5 years. And then last summer, I started at the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Central District of California.
So how much? Go ahead, Ben.
2 AUSAs. So, people aspiring to do trial work, you can do it, right?
Was that the motivation for the move for both of you? Just wanting to go back to sort of your roots of trial work, doing trials more regularly?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is true for Rahul too. It's definitely true for me. I mean, my time at the law firm, I did almost exclusively trial work, even though I have, sort of an appellate academic background and appellate clerkship background, but I wanted to do trial work. And Big Law is great for a lot of things. The one thing I think is not great for, even at firms like mine and Rahul's, is getting up on your feet as much as you would like to be. That was a big motivating factor for me to go be an AUSA. I my feet in court as much as humanly possible, and being an AUSA seems like the best to do. And I'm just excited to go home and be an AUSA where I'm from too, which is a big part of the move as well.
Yeah, largely the same. I mean, like Ben said, that in private practice, I got to be a part of a lot of trial teams, but you're not really going to find the opportunity to be the one who's doing the opening, doing the closing. Even if you get some witnesses, they're typically lower stakes. So the chance to kind of dictate the strategy of your trial, to have the say in the full scope of it, was a big draw. I mean, I think I always wanted to come to the U.S. Attorney's Office. And like Ben said, just serving in my home district, I think is immense value. So it means a lot to be able to be in the Central District as an AOSA.
I remember when I was a summer associate at a big law firm, someone took me out to lunch and they said, we really value getting our young lawyers sort of hands-on practice. Lawyers here get to do depositions in their 6th or 7th year. And I was just like,
yeah,
not sure this is going to work.
That explains why you ended up where you ended up, Phil. I mean, that's the other way. What you're doing is the other way to get real trial work early on in your career.
I was fortunate. I got to be on 3 trial teams within my first year, and was the second chair in a really big trial my 8 or 9 months in. But that is not the norm in civil practice. So how much mock trial have you guys done over the last 7 years?
Well, we coached together. We coached the UCLA team together. Not obviously, like Rahul and I were. Well, obviously, I was a very subsidiary part of that. Rahul played a bigger role. Justin played the biggest role in coaching a UCLA team that was really, really talented and won the tournament that we helped coach them for. So we did that together. And other than that, I have not been super involved in coaching. I sort of judge scrimmages here and there. But it's just been tough. I think if I lived closer to Charlottesville, I would be much more involved in the UVA program. But it's always great when I do get a chance to go back down there, or they're up here to pitch in where I can. And then, I'm a frequent on the DC judging circuit. So, when regionals roll through here, that's my primary connection to AMTA these days.
Yeah, Ben, I don't know if I could say that I deserve more credit than you for that. I judged a couple scrimmages and then maybe watched the tournament. But yeah, it was really exciting getting to coach with Ben. And I've helped Justin a little bit over the years at UCLA, judged some tournaments. So I've tried to be involved. I mean, I think mock trial is such a formative part of my own background that it's nice to still see it going strong. But not as much, I think, as I'd like. So hopefully in the future, a little more involvement.
It is kind of, I don't know if this is true for you too, Rahul, but for me, it's kind of an all or nothing proposition. It's really tough to have one foot in. And so I've just kind of opted to have no feet in, because otherwise I think it will consume way too much of my time and take away from my time with my daughter and stuff. So it's so
true. Yeah. I think as soon as you start getting invested, it's all you want to do. So let me tweak this. Let me, come up with some novel theories. It's hard. It's hard to be halfway in.
for those of you who don't know what they're talking about, so there's the big law school tournament is called the Tournament of Champions. And in 2021, Ben and Rahul coached with Justin Bernstein, UCLA's team that won the tournament. And we drew them randomly in round one, which was awesome. Really great. Loved that. And then drew you guys again in 2022, this past October, which always good seeing you guys, but never good seeing you in the same courtroom. So that was terrible also. But
we feel the same way, Phil. So if it,
you're being nice. What was that experience like? What was it like, the three of you coaching together? That must have been awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I had always sort of admired Justin and Rahul's work from a distance, but getting to work shoulder to shoulder with them was really cool and sort of eye-opening for me, because you see the finished product, like, oh man, this is just like so pristine, like everything is perfectly in place, and then you watch sort of the sausage get made and you're like, oh no, that's just how their brains work. Like I need to kind of like make a mess of things to put it back together. And Justin and Rahul, I think, are excellent at just like, no. Like from minute one, I sort of have a vision for how this is going to play out. And like, here are all the steps, and just not how my brain works, at least. So it was awesome to get to work with them. And I feel like I learned a ton, not just about mock trial, but about trial, from having worked with them.
Yeah, I mean, it was really a lot of fun. I hadn't seen Ben in a bit, and so to get on to Zoom with him and just kind of talk theory, talk shop a little bit was really fun. Much the same as the other side of the coin, just always competing against Ben. It's nice to see that beautiful finished product, but then you get to actually be in the lab with someone. It's a totally different experience. It was a lot of fun.
So I want
the students we coach, I just like want to shout them out. It was like the easiest coaching job of all time.
Yeah.
Like they would like, show us across and be like, yeah, that's dope. Like you should just do that. No. Basically.
If I touched it, it's going to get worse.
Yeah, exactly.
Do it as you wrote it. Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine for them it was probably kind of a surreal experience, like watching these videos that we're about to watch, and then like working with you guys for a semester must have been really cool for them. I mean, I talked to them about it, and they all, they thought it was awesome. I can only imagine.
Yeah, and they were like, "Oh, these guys are actually idiots." Like, what?
Yeah, right. They were like, it was all Ryan and Justin, all those years.
Basically.
I want to go back to the beginning and talk about sort of how you guys first met, if you remember what that was like, when, where. Set the scene for me.
I don't actually know. I remember like rounds against Rahul pretty vividly, but I don't know that I remember a meet cute moment for the two of us, if you will. I remember the moment I really remember Rahul first as a competitor. I can't remember what the tournament was, but I just remember he was like mid-cross, and I turned to, I think it was Juliana Yee, who was my teammate my first 2 years. It was just like, who is this guy? Like, where is this? It was mind-blowingly good. And, you like hear names sort of bubble up through AMTA, but I guess at that point you would have been, I think, a freshman. So it really I just remember thinking oh man, this dude is going to be such a force to reckon with. And I'm often wrong about things, but I was pretty right about that.
How many times did you guys compete against each other over the course of your 3 years where you overlapped?
I think a decent amount, right? I mean, I don't know the number of rounds, but we were on different coasts, so it would have been more frequent if we had been sort of in the same region. But all the sort of top invitationals we were going to and they were going to, and then we run into each other. Do we ever meet at Nationals, Rahul?
I don't think so, which is unfortunate. I think that would have been a lot of fun to play you kind of when both teams were in national form. But yeah, I think it was mostly just invitationals. Yeah,
the WatchMock intern went through the tap summers today, and you guys didn't see each other at nationals.
Phil, is that you? Are you the WatchMock intern?
No, we have an intern.
Okay,
he's in the other room.
Okay.
So
do we get to meet this guy or gal, or they're just rolling the hole?
Phil's gonna walk out with a hat on and say that.
They're busy prepping for the next episode. So Rahul, Ben said all those nice things about you. What were your first impressions?
Oh, I mean, I knew Ben's name, I think, for a while before we competed against each other. And I think just coming into as a freshman to AMTA, you hear certain names like Ben said. Perjuries was this big website that everyone kind of posted on. And Justin suggested we didn't go on it as students, so of course it made it, like 10 times more likely.
Irresistible.
Yeah, exactly. So Ben's name was, I think, always at the top of top competitors or whatever. So I had a lot of nerves going against him for the first time. You hear about how good people are, and then it's one thing to hear it, and then another thing to see it. So Ben lived up to the hype for sure. I remember, I think from the get-go, just being blown away by Ben's poise. He brings an element to the courtroom that I think has always been the case, but that moment when you're first seeing it as a young competitor and you're like, oh, I want to be able to do that. So I remember that pretty vividly. And Ben, your name definitely reached the West Coast, even though we weren't competing in the same spheres.
There's a bunch of like 20-year-olds who are watching this right now. They're like, what's perjuries? Like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a bummer. It's dead now. It was a lot of fun, I think.
I have some listener submitted questions that I want to ask you guys before we get into the actual episode here. One question that I got: what are your favorite things about each other as competitors? What's one thing that your counterpart does better than you?
Everything better than me too. I think Rahul is. So I think my favorite thing that Rahul does is he cuts to the chase so quickly. And there are like multiple contexts in which I think this matters, but one context in which I think he's really great at it is like when there is an objection fight, which I think are more important than people give them credit for in mock trial. Rahul, like the first sentence out of Rahul's mouth is always perfect, and you almost always win or lose an objection in the first sentence. And like it's perfect, not only in the sense that like Rahul has the right rule of evidence or the right exception to years, whatever. Like Rahul is cut through all of this sort of legal mumbo jumbo to be like, here's why you should care about whether this evidence comes in or doesn't come in, and why it would be fair or unfair for it to come in or not come in. And it's just like, boom, encapsulated perfectly, one sentence. And being able to top line like that, either in the objection context, or he also does it really well in speeches, like, topic heading of the paragraph. Here's like the thing that I'm about to talk to you for the next 30 seconds. And it's going to stick with you because that like lead in sentence is really profound. He's so good at that. And it's something that I wish I were better at. Like, I think my like one big weakness as a competitor, as a lawyer, as like a thinker, is I can get a little lost in the weeds, and Rahul's really good about like zooming back up to 10,000 feet, telling you this is what matters.
Thanks, Ben. It's funny. I feel like your strength is the poise you bring. Everything feels earned when Ben's competing. There's a level of calm to all of his speeches, his objections. I think my biggest weakness is I get jumpy and sometimes a little too aggressive. And so it comes off as confrontational. But with Ben, everything just feels measured, and his statements are to the point. And then when he really builds up to that moment where he gets aggressive at the right parts, when he gets indignant at the right parts, it feels earned. And I think that level of measure is very, very hard to teach. And Ben has a very natural poise to it that I think a lot of people watching these rounds can try and incorporate into their own practice.
The next listener submitted question is from Justin B from Los Angeles. Says, you guys share a birthday. Isn't that weird?
Yes.
And not just us, Sam Bateman, who another great UVA and alum. She is also June 29th. Yeah. What is the probability on that?
Really weird.
Yeah. I don't think I realized we shared a birthday for many years, Ben. I think probably not until after our first or second Top Gun round.
Yeah.
So the round we're about to watch, or the closing arguments from the round that we're about to watch, are from downtown 2012. Do you guys have any memory of what the case was about that year?
It's the drunk driving one, right?
Yeah, it's Danny Dawson, right?
Yeah. Why don't you guys tell the viewers who don't know anything about that case what that case was about?
That drunk driving is pretty much what I got. The defendant, so the defendant was Danny Dawson. She or he, I guess, depending on who played them, had been at a bar, got way too drunk. It was like some like windy back road that they were on, right? And then I don't actually remember.
Yeah, I think I just remember vividly like every bad fact about the West Side. Like, it was raining, it was a windy road, like BAC was like, it was like the worst driving conditions fathomable were included in this case packet. So yeah, drove home, got in an accident, someone died.
It was a murder case, right? That was the charge. I think this year you could choose your charge, like murder, manslaughter.
It was like vehicular manslaughter or something.
Yeah, something like that. But this trial, you guys pursued the murder count of that much. I do know. So here's the title screen there. Have you guys seen this round since it happened on video?
I don't think I have.
Yeah, I think I watched it once when it was first uploaded in 2013 or something like that. And even then I just kind of skipped through it, but now it's been a long time.
So we're going to watch the closing arguments from this trial. Do you guys remember who won?
I don't actually.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say
It was.
I think it was Rahul. I'm pretty sure it was Rahul.
It was a split decision, but it did go to Irvine. So the viewers will be able to watch this back and judge based on the closings whether the judges got it right. Let's get into it.
Yes. The photographs of the accident. And may I reserve any remaining time for 5 minutes for appointment? Yes. Thank you. Did you go through that? Mm-hmm. Okay. These photos show you exactly how Vanessa Sullivan died. Every gruesome detail of the crash, every shattered sliver of glass, every warped piece of metal to be seen in the photographs that we offered as State's Exhibit 1. These photos can't show you the real damage that was done. To understand that, there are other snapshots you need to see, photos we don't have. Of Vanessa's empty dorm, where her roommate now lives alone. Of the empty seat now left at the Sullivan family dinner table, the empty frame that should have been Vanessa's college diploma.
First thoughts?
Yeah, what a start. I don't know. Ben, it's your speech. You want to react?
Yeah, I mean, I remember working hard on, I had that idea like early on, the photos we have, here are the photos we don't have, and like really trying to, I don't know if this is the final iteration. I think we did something else at Nationals, used different examples, but like I was trying to crystallize in my mind the most, like, what are the ones that would make you feel it the most? These are the things we don't have, right? Like all the things that this woman could have gone on to achieve that she didn't get the chance to do as a result of this horrific accident. And I really remember like laboring, like racking my brain over and over and over, being like, is that the best example we can come up with? Is there anything better that we can come up with? I felt really good about the diploma one. I can't remember what other ones we used at Nationals, but I remember like coming up with the idea, being excited by the idea early on, and then just working all season on both fine-tuning the idea and then executing it delivery-wise. And I think the delivery here was okay, although I think if Rahul had done it, it probably would have been better, honestly. The always watch the execution, which you could have executed a little better. So.
Are you cognizant of how many people have ripped that intro in the 13 or whatever it is over a decade since?
Really? Oh, that is funny. No. sometimes like you will hear lines repeated, I think. But no, I don't know that like when I've judged regional, I don't know that I've ever seen here's the photos we have, here's the photos we don't have thing.
Have either of you ever, I was going to ask you this later on, but now's a good time. Have either of you ever been in around judging or just as a spectator or otherwise, where you've heard a competitor use a line that was either from this trial or another trial on video or one of the Top Guns, maybe?
The answer definitely has to be yes for you, Rahul.
I mean, I think yes for. I mean, I've heard this. It's very similar opening to a closing to the one we just watched. And not just that, I mean, for sure. And I don't want to say we invented these lines. I think they probably existed before we did them, but it is funny to hear it. I think now as a competitor, I mean, as a judge, things we said as competitors.
For sure. Yeah.
It was easy to lose sight of it. To forget that when that Impala ran off the road, a woman's very future was derailed right along with it. And the reason it was easy to forget is that when it came down to it, the defendant didn't let anything stop her from making dangerous choice after dangerous choice that night. Choices that you've seen today had deadly consequences. And that's why, members of the jury, the defendant has been charged not only with a DUI, but also with Miss Sullivan's murder. Now it's true. The defendant didn't shoot or stab her victim, and there's no evidence. The defendant wanted Miss Sullivan dead, as you heard from Mr. Love in his opening statement. Opposing counsel is right. But no matter what the defense asks you to believe,
I remember thinking that was like a sort of vitally important thing to say, both in the opening and the closing, because there's this just sort of like, and that, to the extent people are sort of like watching these things for like meta lessons learned from us who've done this for a while. One like meta lesson learned that I think I've had throughout years of mock trial is just like, you're going to have a pretty good sense once you've done this for a while what the big concerns of the jurors are going to be, like what their sort of gut level reaction to stuff is. And I thought people's gut level reaction to charging somebody with murder as a result of, like DUI is a senseless, dumb thing to do, reckless, if it has bad consequences, tragic. But I thought people would be like, oh man, that's a reach. Like that's a reach to charge somebody with murder as a result of a DUI, even one resulting in death. And so I thought it was important, like early in our speeches, to be like, look, we'll like cards on the table. This is not the kind of murder you think of when you hear murder in a Law and Order episode, right? Like, and we're just going to get that out as early as possible and acknowledge it, frankly. And like, people talk about sort of pulling the sting on your direct, right? Like getting stuff, bad stuff, it's going to come out on cross, out early on direct. I think the same thing is true thematically in speeches. It's just like, if there is a big weakness in your case and you can acknowledge it without doing fatal damage to the case, do it. Like just cards on the table with the jury, because I think you buy yourself so much credibility when you do that.
Here today, this case simply does not hinge on the simple question of whether their client was trying to hurt the victim or not. As you're going to hear from the judge in just a minute, the real question here today was this: did the defendant act with an extreme and reckless indifference for human life? In other words, members of the jury, did she roll the dice that night without caring who got it? We prove beyond any reasonable doubt that is exactly what she did. And under Midland's law, that means we prove she's guilty of murder. So let's walk through how we prove it, using the three choices my co-counsel, Mr. Ross, asked you to keep in mind at the beginning of today's trial.
So I think when this round happened in, 2012, right? Obviously.
I think so, yeah.
It would have been January or something like that of 2012.
Yeah, it was my senior year, so yeah.
The choices theme was still somewhat novel, but it's been it's been beaten to death, obviously, in the 11 years since. So then, as one of the godfathers of this thing that we all do, I think it's only right that you publicly ban the choices theme. That way everyone is on notice. You can't use it.
I didn't even think it was good when we did it. Like, no, I mean, like it sometimes it fits the case. Like our theme of the case is like, man, so many opportunities this person had to turn back and do the right thing, right? Like, it's coming back to me now that there's like some interaction in the parking lot where some person like asked them not to go and tried to take their keys, but they like refused. And when any like, sometimes you will have a case where like a person is in fact presented with numerous choices to do the right thing and chooses not to do the right thing. But I think the meta lesson here is like, yeah, like try and actually tailor the theme to the case in front of you rather than just like pulling something off the rack that kind of fits and throwing it onto the case, right?
Yeah, I think that was one of the lessons that I learned later on as a coach, which is to think about what the case is actually about and make that the theme rather than like, let me go into the bag of tricks and use one that sounded good on YouTube 10 years ago. And that's why I think it gets recycled so much.
And, you know, our theme on the defense here, I think, was unanswered questions, which is another one of those back pocket themes that you throw in when you can't think of something else.
I don't think you guys appreciate how many people have watched this video. Like obviously the Top Gun final that we're going to watch in a little bit is one of the most watched mock trial videos ever. But this one, this was on YouTube before anything was on YouTube, before the Top Gun videos, before the national championships were on YouTube. Like this was all that there was at the time that this was put on YouTube like 10 years ago. So
yeah, it was like Grape Lady in this video, right? Were the only things on YouTube at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being maybe my senior year at Delaware, or like as a 1L getting ready to try out, and this being like the only thing that was there to watch, other than the DVDs that you had to pay for. I mean, I think that's probably why these two themes are so iconic and have gotten recycled so many times, because it's just like the thing that was out there in the universe for people to copy. Do you guys like, how aware are you guys of like this and the Top Gun rounds and how much they're watched and revered and are just copied over and over?
I mean, that's nice. Yeah, it's like it's flattering. Yeah, and like, you know, it is very flattering, and it's nice that people appreciate the work that Rahul and I put into this and try to emulate it. I mean, I think I speak for both of us when I say, to the extent you like anything that either Rahul and I did on either of those videos, it's the product of a lot of people and a lot of hard work put in by a lot of people, not just us. Like, you know, I can guarantee you that the like pictures we have, pictures we don't have thing would have been like 20% as effective if Toby and Ryan and Jamar hadn't been like, oh man, that's not actually that good as written. Like, we need to get that better. Yeah.
So you heard it here first. Ben Wallace has banned the choices theme. So
Yeah, done.
There you go.
Yeah.
First, the choice to drink too much. From the get-go, opposing counsel has been trying to tell you their client wasn't actually that drunk. In opening statement, Mr. Love stood right where I'm standing now, and he said, sure, Danny had a couple drinks that night, but she wasn't out of control. His words, members of the jury. These are not the bar tabs of somebody who was in control. These aren't even the bar tabs of somebody who was coherent at the end of the night. Those are not the glasses of somebody who was okay to get behind the wheel. And no matter how much the defense's witness, Jordan James, gets up on that stand today and tries to minimize for his friend and his customer, no matter how many of the 19 drinks bought by the defendant, Mr. James claims were sent to other people in the bar, his actions that night speak louder than his words from the witness stand ever could. Because Mr. James admitted on that night, in the moment, he didn't think the defendant should have a pair of darts in his hand, much less a steering.
I remember thinking because the Dawson case was the first case that I competed with. And I remember the analogy between the dart in the hands versus the steering wheel, I just thought was so effective. And it's one of my favorite parts of this closing. Do you remember how you came up with it, Ben?
I don't know. Like sometimes you're reading the case and a fact like really jumps out at you. And I remember reading that one and being like, man, if I was with the buddy and so about the need to like take it out of his hand, for damn sure, I'm not letting that dude drive home. So just yeah, it was one that jumped out at me very, very early on. There's no real magic to it other than that. Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm sure every single prosecution team, when Jordan James was called, used the dart fact. I mean, but I guess the way that you use it in drawing the analogy between the dart in the hand versus the steering wheel. One of the things that like I think is important with content creation is making your content pop, right? Everyone's making the dart argument, but not everyone is making the dart argument and making it pop in the speeches. And that's a really good example. Is that something that you worked on hard with the coaches, if you remember from 12 years ago?
I don't remember this specific example, but I think you're exactly right. Is like there's like the I think B to B plus version of a good mock trial closing is like, here are best facts. They're sort of like situated in the legal architecture correctly. And the way to get that to an A is just like sort of relentless pursuit of how can we make this point in the most effective way possible. And sometimes that is like the most rhetorically effective way possible. And that I do think was a rhetorically effective way to do it, right? Is, like I as a general matter tend to like these sort of like thematic couplets, right? Like we talked about the pictures we have, the pictures we don't have, dart in the hand, steering wheel in the hand. Like I think sort of offsetting, juxtaposing things like that can often be really effective. But more than the like, oh, I like those couplets, I think the real takeaway is like, just absolutely beat your head against the wall over and over and over again until you're confident you're making the point in the most persuasive way possible. Because I think you're right, Phil. Like I think almost every closing did the like, look, if you're too drunk to throw darts, you're too drunk to drive. Like that's easy. And like getting it to be as rhetorically powerful as possible is hard. Like it takes a lot of work and a lot of thought, but it's worth it. I think it pays off.
Members of the jury, maybe you're not convinced by what Jordan James thought. After all, the fact that Jordan James thought the defendant was drunk doesn't prove that Danny Dawson herself thought she was drunk.
Sorry to keep interrupting. We're going to be here all night, but I have lots of questions for you guys, and this is my one shot. So, Ben, I'm going to push back on something you said in the closing a second ago. And now that you're a real prosecutor, I'm just wondering what your opinion is on this. I could see someone, a real prosecutor or a real criminal defense attorney or whatever, hearing you say to a jury, maybe you're not convinced and not like that. Do you have a view on that now that you're a real lawyer?
Yeah, I think probably I would still do it today. Because I think a level of sort of candor with the jury is always a good thing. Like, I think it's always okay to be like, look, if you don't think that's enough, we got more. I think that's always okay. You're definitely right, Phil, that I think there are a lot of people, and like a lot of my colleagues, I think people I practice with now would be like, yeah, I don't care for that. And that's, I think that's a stylistic thing more than a substantive thing. I think if you're going to say something like that, oh, maybe you're not convinced, the next thing you say is got to be pretty darn good, though.
Right.
Yeah. What is the next thing? Do you know what the next thing is, Phil?
We're going to find out.
I don't know.
We're about to find out.
Yeah.
But what does, members of the jury, is the defendant's own behavior that night. Everything she did that night reveals she too realized she had no business getting behind the wheel. Why? When she walked out of the bar and got into that vehicle, was the first thing she said to Taylor Hobson, we're taking the back roads. I do not want to run into the cops tonight. Why, members of the jury, when taken back to the police station, when given the chance to prove her sobriety with a simple exhale, did the defendant refuse? Did she say no? The answer is simple. It's because the defendant was drunk and she knew it, members of the jury. Which brings us to our second point. Even knowing she was drunk, she chose to get behind the wheel. Members of the jury, when you mess something up, it's hard to find an easy way to cancel out the damage you've done. No harm, no foul. But the defendant had that chance on September 20th. Because when she walked out of the bar, there was a taxi cab sitting waiting, beckoning the defendant. The cab driver literally called out to her, "Can I give you a ride?" And if Miss Dawson had just had the sense to say yes, it wouldn't matter how much.
Really good soft for emphasis there, Ben. That's something you guys had planned.
I think so. Yeah. I really liked, I remember really liking this part of the closing, the theme, like it is tough in life when you mess something up, to just be able to cancel it out, rang true to me. And I remember, I think because I liked it so much, I had a tendency to like really hit that early part of these couple paragraphs hard. And so, yeah, we worked on sort of bringing it back down for emphasis, silence or quietness for emphasis.
So you guys talked about perjuries at the beginning of the episode. I think my guess would be the prevailing wisdom on perjuries at the time would have been that you were the super substantive competitor who was never going to mess up and was always going to be right. How much did you want to work on the other parts of your game, performance, namely, and do stuff like that in the rounds to sort of say, yeah, I can do the other stuff, but I can also do the performance stuff and be dynamic and outperform you too? How much did you work on?
A lot. I mean, I think people are over crediting how substantively prepared I was, if that was the rap on me. Like, yeah, I worked really hard to make sure my writing was good and that I was buttoned up on all that stuff when I came in. But you're right. Like, I think Rahul is like a much more, I don't know whether it's natural or not, but it seems like he's much more naturally sort of an impressive performer than I am. And so I had to work really hard to sort of get to that level. And it's, something that we repped a lot, just to try and build up to a place where I could compete with people like Rahul. Because you're right, like if I didn't do that work, he would have been running circles around me even more than he already was. So
no.
Did that critique bother you at the time, that people were like, he's not the performance guy, he's just the substantive smart guy, he's not going to perform with the big energy dynamic people?
No, because I think they were right to like, they're right. Like, to the extent, not to the extent, that was the weak part of my game, so to speak. Like, it was definitely the case that I was not as compelling a presenter as other people in AMTA. And like, you're not going to get better. Like, you're not going to improve if you just deny that the weakness exists. Like, it was a weakness in my game, and I worked really hard to try and improve at that. And I think that's like, do I think that I started understanding cases meaningfully better my junior and senior year? No. Like, I got better as a presenter, as a performer. And that's why I started to have, more success later on in my AMTA career.
She had to drink. Because whether she tossed back 2 or 12 or 20, if Vanessa Sullivan is in Mr. Lyons' cab, she's getting home safe. Think about that. The defendant dropped almost $100 on alcohol that night, and for a few bucks, she could have effectively guaranteed Miss Sullivan's safety.
Let me just pause. I just want to comment on the case writing here. This is how you know this case is from 2012. Alcohol today, it's like 3 drinks.
It's also the fact that it's not like an Uber is
Yeah. Also, the really grainy footage here. You can barely see your face at the council table. Like, you can't even tell that it's you.
It's like 4 pixels. Yeah.
Yeah. At the time, though, this was probably like the best camera that existed. I actually think somewhere on the internet, I forget who has it, but there's another angle of this trial. So I think I've actually seen this closing, like the lady on the left side of from the other perspective, which is really strange, but a worse camera though.
She chose to lead her victim over to a 2-ton death trap with a steering wheel and an accelerator, because that's what 4,000 pounds of metal is. When you whip it along a path, you couldn't walk without falling.
Death trap is the other iconic line that I've heard people rip a bajillion times. What's the backstory behind that?
I don't know. I remember really liking those lines. I don't really remember the origin of them, but I remember liking the I remember thinking like, you can't just call it a death trap. You got to explain like I think the second part of that stanza there was important, because like if you just call it a death trap, it feels like showing, not telling. But you're like, when you say, oh, it's a death trap because she couldn't walk without falling over and it's 4,000 pounds of metal, like that's when I think the punchline really lands.
If that the choice to risk Miss Sullivan's safety when the safe option was right there for the taking, if that's not extreme indifference to human life, what is? And that brings us around to our third choice, the defendant's choice to drive dangerously. Members of the jury made, even after all the drinking, if the defendant had displayed even an ounce of caution that night, maybe then we could talk about her behavior being manslaughter and not murder. But she couldn't even do that. Because as you heard from the defense's own paid expert witness, Dr. Leslie Rahul, who sat right here on this stand today.
This is a slight thing, but it's one of those little things I like in the closing. I like how you hit the stand like 6 times instead of like once. I found that really funny.
Who sat right here on this stand today.
You just punctuated,
The
man.
defendant was going at least
Yeah.
16 miles per hour over the speed limit at night, in the rain, on a road that had claimed lives before. And the defense wants to say
one thing I've always appreciated, Ben, about your performance style there is just how you own the courtroom. And, you know, we're trained in mock trial, and I think as real practitioners, never turn your back on the jury, never, you know, take your eyes off the jury. And that confidence that you walk back away from the jury stand, where your back's not to the jury, but you're not looking at them, you're just talking. It just shows an ownership of the courtroom I don't know, it's a pleasure to watch always, but it shows just how natural you are, I think, in that environment.
It's a really good example of moving with purpose. For if we're like sort of bringing this back to, I think there's a couple of big lessons from this closing that are sort of like basic things that we're kind of just overlooking. One is, I think, moving with purpose. The movement is very natural, and it's for a reason. Everything that you're doing physically is for a reason. The other big thing is, I think there's a tendency for newer competitors, or even more experienced competitors, to recite testimony in closing instead of arguing. This is a really good example of there's very little, and then this witness said this, and then this witness said this, and then they called this witness who said that. It's all argument. And just like back to the basics, people that are watching this and saying, how do I do a closing? That's one of the big takeaways is it's really persuasive argument instead of just reciting the trial transcript.
And just one other point is it's not just your own, you know, not just argument based on your own evidence. Like, you know, a big thing that the good closings do, I think, is, and I already know what they're going to tell you. What they're going to tell you is this next thing. And let me get out in front of that by starting to break that down before who even gets up here.
Things as excuses. The dark, the rain, the road, as if somehow their client were unaware that it's dangerous to drive at night in the rain on a curvy road where people have died speeding before. And sure, if it had gotten dark real quick, or if the rain had come out of nowhere, maybe then they'd had the beginning of a decent argument, but that is not what happened. When Miss Dawson left the bar, it was already drunk. When Miss Dawson left the bar, it was already drained. When Miss Dawson chose to take Canyon Road, she knew people had died back there before. Mr. Lyons told you. He had said that to her directly. And Miss Dawson admitted it from the stand here today. She was aware of all of it. And even still, even knowing that the odds were stacked against her, how dangerous it was to drive back there, even with Miss Hobson begging her from the back seat, please, please slow down. The defendant was speeding 16 miles per hour over the speed limit, and it's those choices. The choices to be a daredevil in the face of danger, the choice to be flippant in the face of Taylor Hobson and Vanessa Sullivan's fear, that shows you the indifference she acted with that night. She made dangerous choice after dangerous choice. And now a young woman is dead. That's why we're asked to find the defendant guilty of Miss Sullivan. Thank you.
Ben, is it as good as you remember it?
Like I said, I think the writing is really good. Like I think there are some execution things I would have done differently. And like I don't know, the further I get away from AMTA and into real practice, like some of the melodrama of it grates on me. I don't know if you find it the same way, Rahul.
I do, for sure. I think of mock trial in general, I think that's something I've come to realize, but I don't know. It's as good as I remember it.
Well, here's an sort of interesting meta question that I think we all struggle with who are former competitors, former coaches, current, whatever, is do you think that obviously the elephant in the room is that real trial lawyering is nothing like this, right? Or I shouldn't say it's nothing like this. It's a lot like this. It's like you said, Ben, it's not as dramatic. Not nearly as dramatic. I wonder if the sort of issue is that the competitors are too dramatic, or if it's that the real trial lawyers aren't doing a good enough job.
Yeah, it's probably
really. I really wonder. I mean, I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, like everything else in life.
Yeah.
But sometimes I want, like, maybe this is just the right way to do it, because the thing that I also struggle with is it's not like we have random people judging these rounds. We have trial lawyers judging these rounds. So if it's bad, then theoretically that would be borne out in the scores, and it's not. The teams that are performing in a way that's dynamic and dramatic are doing well most of the time. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, and look, I mean, the reason that I presented like that and Rahul's about to present like that in the closing we're about to watch is because that scores points. You're right. Like, I mean, if it was ineffective, we wouldn't have done it. And then, and sort of the question as to whether AMTA competitors should ramp it back or real trial lawyers should ramp it up. I think probably my answer is it is okay to have some big dramatic moments, but like I think you just got to pick and choose a little bit more. Like to me, the tenor of that closing was just like a little too ramped up. I think I would have had, if I were doing it today, I think I would have had much longer stretches that were just sort of business as usual. Here's the facts, and then pick like really one or two places to hit it hard.
Yeah, and in your defense, I think when we watch your Top Gun performances, if we ever get to that, then you're going to see I think there's a little bit of a difference in both of you, in terms of, I think, a little bit more professionalism, which makes sense. You're a lot older in those videos, but I don't know. I
jaded old men at that point,
Yeah, right. But because it's just like sort of like, what are we even doing here if we're not teaching competitors to do this the right way? What's the point of all this? But I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. I think if real trial lawyers were a little bit, like to use your word, Ben, a little bit more ramped up, then I think that'd be good. But I also think
the good ones are, I think, like the really, really effective ones, I think they pick their spots expertly. And like, at least in my experience, it seems like they don't think that hard about it either. It's just like they just have this natural, like, I'm sure you found it this way with Beth, Rahul's like, they sort of have this natural instinct that's like, this is what people are going to care about. And as a result, it's what I care about. And that's where I'm going to get exercised.
Yeah. And I think she is definitely a prime example. And this is Beth Wilkinson, who's the founder of the firm I was at, who's an incredible trial attorney. I think folks should, look her up and see what there is online about her. She is so good at reading the jury and knowing when to ramp up. And I think you're right. The answer is somewhere in the middle. I've seen a lot of trial attorneys who are too dull. I think that they don't bring the drama and picking a place to meet jury expectations, because folks come in as jurors, they want to be engaged with. They want to see something engaging. So meeting their expectations is part of being a good trial attorney. So I think finding your place to be dramatic, to be indignant is critical. So maybe not the way we do it in these closings, but a little more of this heat would be nice in real court.
So now, Rahul, we're going to watch your closing. Do you have any recollection as to what you were thinking when Ben's closing ended and he sat down and it was your turn?
Yeah, it was a ball of nerves for sure. I mean, I think just watching it, even hearing the opening paragraph, I remember thinking at the time, yeah, I got to stand up after this and do something, because that was incredible. I think that the sliver, shards of glass line in the first paragraph, and then Daredevil in the face of danger line in the last paragraph there. I remember those, playing in my head and trying to think about, how to start a closing going after something like that. So a lot of nerves for sure. So I don't know what we're about to see. I haven't seen this in quite some time.
Yes, sir. Your Honor, permission to remove the sponsor?
Yes. You can do what you want. Can I just hop in right here? Don't ever take it down. Every AMTA round I judge, they take it down. Don't ever take it down. Let them take it down.
Yeah.
It's we're gonna see that come back. I think it'd be a problem for me at the end.
we will find out. Spoiler alert. And Ben, in that moment, you're just like, I got them. You see them putting the bottles away, and you're just like,
oh, I would literally just meant like, don't. From my perspective, I was saying I would never take down the like bar receipt or whatever. I would make Rahul do it. But now that you say this, I'm remembering exactly what happened here, and that's another good reason not to take it down. Yeah.
Fell right into the trap. I don't remember taking this long to put these cups away. Like that's the other thing. It took a long time to put all those cups.
Yeah.
Drinks will do that to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I'm like setting up a bar back there.
Man.
Yeah, this Irvine team was good.
Yeah. So, Rahul, for the historians that are watching this, who do we have next to you there?
So that's Calvin Love, who's right at the end of the table there. That was Neil Thacker, who just helped me stack up about 1 million glasses. And then behind the receipt was our defendant was Mazamir Yousefi.
She was great.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
She competed in law school too. It was really excellent.
Ben, who are your co-counsel in this round?
So it's Megan O'Donnell is to my left, and Jalen Ross is to my right. And Jalen, I think, opened on this side of the case.
Right.
And then on the other side of the case, I opened and Megan closed.
Yes. 64 questions. Mr. Wallace got up here on the cross-examination of Miss Danielle Dawson, and he asked her 64 different questions. And then we learned that those were 64 questions the police never bothered to ask her themselves. So I'll question for the prosecution. Why didn't Officer Foster interview Miss Dawson? If she had, what would she have learned? Would she have learned why Miss Dawson drove off the side of the road? Would she have learned how many drinks Miss Dawson had? Would she have learned how long it took her to consume those different drinks? Would we even be in court today? The problem for the prosecution is that those were just a few of the
There's always a problem for the prosecution. There's always a problem. It's never not a problem for the prosecution.
That's a great example of what we were talking about earlier, Phil. It's like everybody makes this point, right? Like the police could have done more or whatever. They didn't do things they should have done. That's like the apex effectiveness way to make that point. Is the we just did.
Do you remember how balanced, like what the better side of the case was for this fact pattern?
I remember thinking there were a lot of bad facts for the defense. Like, I don't know. It seems like I think the charge is a stretch, and that's the tough thing about the prosecution side of the case, but the facts are really good for the prosecution.
I think that balanced it. It felt like one of the more balanced cases, at least thinking back on it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I remember preferring defense, but what did I know? I was a freshman at that time. I don't even know.
I mean, as a general matter, in a mock trial criminal case, you almost always prefer defense, right? I guess it just doesn't change.
Yeah,
and not to kind of pull the or to spoil with the Top Gun rounds, but I remember that just being like a factor we considered when thinking about the coin toss is what side we're going to pick, and feeling strongly for defense. I think in both years.
Answered questions. This was a case about those unanswered questions. Now, the reason that those questions are so important is because here in court, it's the prosecution that has the burden of proof. Members of the jury, it seems that there was a point during today's trial where they forgot that fact. They got up here on the cross-examination of Ms. Dawson. They said the police asked you to prove you were sober. They asked you to prove you were innocent. Those were their words.
So I always wondered, was that something that they asked her, why didn't you prove your innocence with the breathalyzer or whatever it was? Was that something that a lot of teams had done and you were ready for, if they did that, we're going to do this? Or was that something that was unique to this round that you sort of did on the fly?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were always on the lookout for an opportunity to allege burden shifting, and sometimes it's a stretch and sometimes it's not. But I think we'd heard it before, for sure, other teams going out. I think they put that fact in there for folks to go after. And I do think it's an effective point because you had the chance to do a breathalyzer. So I remember being prepared for it. For sure. I think the phrasing of it was probably a little bit in response to what happened in the round, but yeah, we'd seen it before, I think.
I remember at coming out of that round being like, well, I will never ask that question that way again. Gonna have to finesse the wording on that a little bit.
In this country, members of the jury, that's not how the law works.
Can you pause there?
Because on September,
that's just always awesome. It's just it always works and it's always awesome.
Taking the flags out and waving them mid-close.
I think it brings the jury it's a buy-in to say we're all, part of a collective. I'll say, now the pride in saying Rahul Huri on behalf of the United States, it's a very, I don't know, it's hard to describe that feeling. And I think thinking back to that line, I felt very similar delivering that.
And I don't want to be corny, but we have a system of justice we should be proud of. And I think reminding the jury that they are engaged in a noble pursuit, it kind of brings the gravity back to even in a fake case like this, brings the gravity back to the moment.
September 24th, it was the police's job to prove Miss Dawson was not sober. And here in court, it was the prosecution's job to prove she was guilty. But there were 3 unanswered questions, 3 questions that kept the prosecution from meeting their burden of proof. And I want to walk you through each of those questions one at a time, starting with the first. Was Miss Dawson actually intoxicated? Today, the prosecution, they called several witnesses to the stand. They tried to tell you, yes, Miss Dawson had drink after drink after drink, but did they actually ever give us a number? Miss Hobson told us, I couldn't remember how many she had. I was drinking myself. Mr. Lyons told us at first I saw her have 2 drinks, and then maybe she had more. I'm not sure. And then we learned that Officer Foster performed sobriety tests on Miss Dawson. The prosecution, they chose to call Officer Ryan Foster to the stand. Miss Dawson told you that Officer Foster asked her to walk in a straight line. Officer Foster asked her to stand on one leg. Officer Foster asked her to touch her hands to her nose. The prosecution, they want to make this case about choices. They chose to call Officer Foster to the stand. Why didn't they ask her how Miss Dawson performed on those sobriety tests? Did she fail? Did she
pass? What were they trying to keep from us? That's reasonable doubt. Now, they tried to tell you that these receipts, well, they proved Miss Dawson had 19 alcoholic drinks, but members of the jury, we know that just because you order a drink doesn't mean you drank it. Just last night, me and my friends, we went out to Grimaldi's Pizza.
What's Grimaldi's Pizza?
It's a pizza place, and yeah, it's delicious. It's fantastic. It's so obvious. I'm not from New York. In hindsight, but at the time, I'm sure it felt good.
That's like a Bernstein spot, though, right? He really,
yeah. I think he introduced us to it.
Because I think it was like a big Matarisi spot. Like Matarisi dug it, and he turned Bernstein. I don't know why I know so much about the culinary habits of other Hampton folks.
So was the script just like, just this weekend, me and my friends went to insert local restaurant here?
That's basically, yeah.
Me and the dudes having fun at insert game of play.
They're normal people.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Do you remember any others that you used?
I don't. That's the standout one, I think, just because I also really dig the spot. But I'm sure any city we were in, we would drop.
Now, Mr. Love, he did something uncharacteristic. Something he doesn't usually do. He decided to be generous.
Sick burn on
He
Calvin.
bought 3
Right.
drinks. And even though I had one...
This is so unfair because he's probably one of the most generous people.
Got a bunch of laughs. All the Irvine people, if there were any, laughed. All the UVA people sat there stone-faced.
Stone-faced. Not funny.
I always tell, like, when like family come and watch us, I'm like, you guys, if they see anything funny, if you laugh, you're out of here. You're banned from Drexel events. So you better not laugh. I don't care how funny it is. It's not funny. Anything that we say, you laugh hysterically.
Yeah,
They're not going to know. Yeah.
Had his. Mr. Love paid for all 3 of them. And we know that's what happened on September 24th. It was Vanessa Sullivan's 21st birthday. Are we really to believe that the birthday girl bought her own drinks? Which brings us to question number 2. Was Miss Dawson actually driving recklessly? Today you heard from Officer Foster. She told you that if she thought Miss Dawson was actually driving dangerously, she would have pulled that car over. Regardless of any 1001 call, regardless of any other officer in distress, if she thought that car needed to be off the road, she would have pulled it over first. She didn't pull Miss Dawson over for drunk driving. She didn't pull Miss Dawson over for speeding. She didn't pull Miss Dawson over for anything. The prosecution, they want you to believe that Miss Dawson drove so recklessly that it constitutes murder. But she didn't drive recklessly enough to get pulled over for a speeding ticket?
So that's another example of like the sort of juxtaposition thing we were talking about earlier, right? Like dart in the hand, steering wheel in the hand. That's a great one, right? Like how can it possibly be the case that your driving is so reckless it should earn you a murder rap, but it's not reckless enough that a cop is going to pull you over when you're passing them? That's just great writing.
And I remember because Neil's cross of the officer is, I think, also on YouTube, and I've seen that a couple times. And his cross on that point was really strong. I forget who played your cop, Ben. Do you remember? I know it was a woman, I think.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I remember Neil's cross of your cop, who was very good, was really strong on that particular point. Which again, the thing we've been saying, I'm sure everyone made the point that you didn't pull her over, you didn't think she was speeding, but the way it popped in the speech and the cross, I thought was really good.
Why did Miss Dawson actually swerve? Today we learned from Professor Roman that Officer Ryan Foster, yes, the same Officer Ryan Foster you heard from in court today, the same Officer Foster that failed to mention sobriety tests, also performed an accident reconstruction. The prosecution chose call Officer Foster to the stand. They decided not to ask her about that reconstruction. They didn't ask her about the data that she collected. They didn't ask her about the measurements she took. What were they trying to hide? That's reasonable doubt. We learned from Professor Roman that speed couldn't have been the cause of the accident. There's just too much we don't know.
I remember the Foster Direct being a really, really unique take on the Foster content that UVA did. Most other teams, I think, including us, obviously emphasized heavily either the sobriety test or the accident reconstruction. And UVA didn't touch either of them, which made the cross, I think, incredibly difficult because if you're kind of forced to bring up these topics and then knock them down. So finding a way, I think, to respond to that, because Foster was probably the meatiest cross, I think, on the defense from a case perspective. And so finding a way to kind of address Foster was a big part of this speech. The best we could do is this choices thing, and you didn't ask about it.
I mean, it worked. It's working pretty well.
I think it's, you don't often see these. I think it's happening more often now in law school mock trial than at least I experienced it as a competitor. But these novel theories where you don't go after everything, where you come up with like a creative way to address the fact that your witness has weaknesses. I think it was the one and only time we saw such a unique take on the Foster Direct.
And these are, this trade-off is what it's always going to be, right? So the sort of points calculus is we'll be able to put together a good enough direct that it's not going to matter. The missing content's not going to matter. Their cross is going to be hurt substantially by the fact that they are unprepared for it, or we take away some of their biggest cross points. And the way to make it back, if you're on the Irvine side of this, is to do exactly what Rahul just did, and it's punish us for doing it in closing, like try to pick the points back up in closing by pointing out, look, these guys had the opportunity to give you all this evidence that they've chosen not to.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing from a team strategy perspective to do is to react to an argument that you're anticipating having to refute not being made. And it's really hard. You would think it's like, well, great, one less argument, but it's people struggle with it. I mean, the amount of times that I've seen teams cross-examine on things that weren't said on direct, and it's hard. You have to be a really advanced competitor and a well-coached team to not do that, which these teams obviously were. And I thought this was, to your point, Ben, probably the best way you can respond to that kind of quirky theory with that cop.
Yeah. And I mean, look, I don't know how, I haven't fully thought through how this would work in the AMTA world, but I think if this were a real cross, right, or the cross of the cop were, in the real context, I would just get up there and be like, so just to be clear, on the stand here today, you're not opining on accident reconstruction, right? Just lock them in and then, use that admission on closing. And I think that might work in context, right? They kind of can't say no at that point, right? It's like, no, I didn't talk about that on direct examination. It's like, great, okay, now I got that admission. Just throw it back in your face and close it.
Right.
Did Miss Dawson drive off the side of the road because in those sheets of pouring rain, she couldn't see in front of her? We don't know. Did Miss Dawson swerve because her car hydroplaned on the wet pavement and she just lost control? We don't know. Is it like Ms. Dawson said, she swerved because some animal jumped in front of her car and in that moment she had no choice but to swerve? We don't know. Members of the jury, we don't know. After we don't know. After we don't know does not add up to proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
That's so good. It's so good. And I have heard tons of times in rounds since then. I don't know if this was a Rahul. I have definitely said that myself before. I think after seeing this, being like, "Oh, that was dope." I don't know if this was a Rahul original, but man,
it is not. I cannot take credit for it. It is. Probably one of my favorite ways to do the burden of proof, I think, on the defense, but I can't claim the credit for that one.
Is this still like in the game, Phil? Or are the kids still doing this, as they say?
For sure. For sure. I mean, I actually think at regionals this past February, one of my Drexel teams used that as their outro for defense.
Love it.
So not only are the kids doing it, but the old guys like me are doing it.
Choices gone. We don't know after we don't know can stay.
Yeah, right. I guess that's the official ruling of the committee here. So or the home stretch.
Just a moment, Mr. Wallace will have a chance to get up here and give his rebuttal. We ask that he answer 3 very specific questions. I've written them down right here.
All right. So Ben, are you panicking when you're like, okay, there's 3 questions. I probably have like 36 seconds. What are you thinking?
I think I am. Yeah. Like in the moment right now in this room, I'm like, oh my God, did I actually answer the question? I don't really remember how it went down. But this is a really smart thing to do as a defense closer, and to do it in the point of the speech that Rahul's doing it, which is basically like, I've just told you, Ben, that I'm going to sit down and now I'm going to dare you to do something, because it's tough to know how to respond. And I don't recall how I did, so we'll find out in real time.
Yeah, I thought you responded as well as you could, because I remember hearing these questions and thinking, I don't know if there's a good answer to any of these.
Well, yeah, that's good writing on Rahul's part. You don't want to give me like
if you're going to ask questions, they better be unanswerable questions.
Put them on this piece of paper. I'm gonna read them aloud to you.
Oh, I forgot the paper.
Why didn't they ask Officer Foster about field sobriety tests? Why didn't they ask Officer Foster about accident reconstruction? Why didn't Officer Foster pull over Danielle Dawson? Members of the jury, I'm gonna put these questions right here.
Okay.
This is where Officer Foster sat. This is.
He didn't hit the stand 6 or 7 times like
you gotta drum it on. You gotta drum on it.
Yeah, right.
This is where those questions went unanswered. This is where they failed to ask them. We hope that for once in today's trial, the prosecution will actually try to answer some questions.
Does this hurt you as a prosecutor?
Yeah, it's funny because I will talk about it in a second, but I've got thoughts.
Yeah.
We ask that you find Miss Dawson not guilty. Thank you.
What are your thoughts?
It's the drama of it is definitely not something I'd want to recreate now, but I think it was all very calculated, right? Ask it at the end. Tailor the questions to the round. I mean, we obviously always did something similar to this, but the first 2 questions at least were very specific to the theory that UVA ran. So if you're going to do something like this as a competitor now, I mean, I think it's easy to have canned questions, and then it seems canned, I think, to someone watching it. So try and tailor at least one question to the actual round. And then as if I were responding to this, first of all, I picked, I think, probably impossible questions, but I would want to try and answer at least one if I got something like this, or do what Ben did, which I think was just such a power move in this rebuttal. I do remember Ben's rebuttal. I think one of the standout moments in my college career was Ben's response to this.
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but this is going to bother me, so I have to ask this one more time to you both. When you're like watching mock trial rounds, whether it's scrimmaging or judging or whatever it is, are you like cringing when you see people being super dramatic now that you're real attorneys and you've been practicing for a number of years? Or are you just like, this is part of what happens? Like, how are you viewing it now that you're, 6 years post-competitor?
So I'll say too, like, part of it I think is live, it bothers me less. Like, first off, it's always going to bother me more when it's me. Like, I watched Rahul and I was like, that was just awesome. Like, that doesn't seem too dramatic at all to me. It's always going to bother you more when it's you. Second off, I think like it's tougher on video. Like live, you're sort of in the moment with the person. And so you get sort of swept up in the drama of it and it doesn't bother me as much. I will say, like, yeah, when I judge amped rounds now, there are definitely times where I'm like, ooh, that's like a little over the top. But if it's well done, like whatever, like you said, it's horse points. Everybody knows it's like part of the game. I think the judges know it's part of the game. And realistically, like if you're going up against another top amped team, they're gonna be doing the same exact thing. And then the question is just like, who's doing it better?
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that does make me cringe, and I've said this a bunch, is the witness stuff. I think is I don't know if the law school circuit has just gotten to me, and I'm now I'm no fun. But I hate the witness stuff. That bugs me a ton. But the
I'm
attorney,
really I'm not a character witness guy, really. Like, yeah, I love a good expert. Yeah.
yeah,
I'm with you there too, Phil. I think that's probably what gets me most. But yeah, I think judging around, I don't feel it. You get the full picture from pretrial to closing, so you're, like Ben said, you're part of the emotion. You're bought in. But yeah, watching myself back on the video.
let's see Ben's rebuttal.
Counsel just smacked that piece of paper down, accused us of trying to hide something from him. Funny then that the first thing he did when he stood up here was take all these cups and hide them behind this podium as though you would forget what his
And the way they clank is just so painful. It's just like it hurts. I hurt for you guys hearing that.
client had done. What else did he try to hide from you? How about the fact that no eyewitness to this crash ever saw the deer they claimed was there? How about the fact that the defendant chose to speed 16 miles per hour over the speed limit, as her own witness said, down a road she knew had killed people before? Do not let Miss Dawson hide behind questions that have already been answered. We know she was drunk. We know she was speeding. She murdered Vanessa Sullivan. Find her guilty.
So, what are your guys' overall thoughts watching that back now? For the
I mean, my primary thought is like, and I was so bad at this. You just got to have more time for rebuttal. Like because like then I could have made like a college try at actually answering Rahul's question, probably unsuccessfully. But like when you have 16 seconds or whatever I just used, you're pretty much dooming yourself to. Like I think I made good use of the time, and I think I knew I was going to do the cups right when they took him down, but being able to like marry the cups and the challenge with the paper, I think that was a good move, I think, because it was the only thing I could have done in that situation.
It made it responsive, and I think and not only responsive, but it felt like you'd come up with it in the moment. I mean, which you clearly had, but which I think is important in mock trial when you do the same rounds again and again, for the jury to feel, or your judges to feel like they're seeing it for the first time.
I have a couple of wrap-up questions about your college career before we move on to the law school stuff. So I'm just going to read you guys back your results at nationals for the 3 years you overlap. 2010, UVA was 6-2, third in the division. Irvine 5-3, eighth. In 11, that's been your junior year and Rahul your sophomore year. Irvine 5-3. You win your first All-American, and you guys were honorable mention. And Ben, your UVA team was 5-2-1, and that was your All-American year. The next year, which is Ben's senior year, Rahul your junior year, UVA is 5-3 and seventh in their division. And Irvine is 7-1 and second. And then Rahul your senior year after Ben had graduated, you were 8.5 ballots when they moved to the 12 ballot system, third in the division. So how painful is it for you guys to have never won NCT? Never been in the final. I think it's one of the great injustices in mock trial history. How much does that hurt, even after all the stuff you went on to accomplish afterwards?
Yeah,
it sucks. Still sucks today. Like I'm bitter about it still. The small consolation. So my 1L year of law school, we made it to and won Thailand Nationals. One of my teammates was JJ Snyder, who, in my view, is one of the best amped competitors ever. He went to Harvard, he's been to the final, but not won. We won. It felt like an exorcism for both of us, just to finally have reached the hilltop. What bugs me most about not to and winning the finals EBA is just like, there are a lot of people who are important to me who that would have felt like paying them back for all the time and effort they put into me and put into the team. Like, I would have loved to win one for Toby Heitens. I would have loved to win one for Ryan Faulkner. As it turns out, they didn't need me to win one. So I'm glad that they have gotten it done since.
Yeah, I feel much the same. I think the Top Gun 2015 was probably what felt to me like the closest to getting something like that, because I did it with Justin, who was my coach at Irvine too. And yeah, like you said, Ben, I think it's the people I wanted to win with more than anything, and all the folks who were at council table in this video, and then folks my senior year too. I really wanted to win it with them. I think it would have meant a lot to all of us to, in college, you're finding yourself and you're finding your team. And so that, I don't know, it would have been, I think, something important to me to win it with those people. So that's probably what bothers me most. And two, I think we're pretty good back then. So it would have been nice. I think.
Now we're going to fast forward to your second year of law school. And I want to just talk about Top Gun for a second.